So, for this particular section, we're going to talk about music and where it comes from. There is no complete historical evidence that exists to tell us exactly who sang the first song or who whistled the first tune or made the first rhythmic sounds that resembled anything like what we know today as music. But researchers do know it happened thousands of years ago. The earliest civilizations throughout Africa, Europe, and Asia had music. Many believe that music first arose in the Paleolithic period, though it remains unclear to us as whether this was the middle 300,000 to 50,000 BP or upper Paleolithic 50,000 to 12,000 BP. The vast majority of Paleolithic instruments have been found in Europe and date to the Upper Paleolithic. We exist in two types of audio environments. One is unplanned, random, and sometimes maddening, especially in densely populated cities. The other is planned and under the control of human beings, and we call it music. The shape sounds between the silence. In the same way, we can perceive all sounds as floating in an ever present silence. Silence contains them and defines them. When a sound ends, silence becomes more obvious and tangible, although it was there all the time. Silence is like a container, and sound is the contained. How does sound communicate? Well, the tradition of music may have begun when someone thought, why wait for the soothing call of the morning bird when I can make that sound myself? Much music, especially that of early cultures, imitates sounds of the natural world, which some used to believe were the voices of the gods. The basic element of music is a tone or note, a sound produced by the human voice or an instrument that maintains a given frequency of vibration. So, what is a tone? A tone is a musical or vocal or a melodious sound with reference to its pitch, quality, and strength intensity. Thus, a sound of single frequency is called tone. However, its intensity can vary. The scale, which is not the same in all cultures, is a sequence of tones or frequencies from low to high. At first, both Western and non-Western scales comprised of 5 tones. This is known as the pentatonic scale. Western scale now has 7 tones and is called the diatonic scale. So I'm going to play for you quickly a sound of a diatonic scale. So let's see if we can get this to work. Do it again. Tonic. So that was C major diatonic scale. Now we will look at C major pentatonic. Okay, now let's take a look at C minor pentatonic. Okay, here we go. Hear the difference. All right, so let's go continue. So those are the differences between our pentatonic scale and our diatonic scale. The first one we heard was C major diatonic scale, and the second one was C major pentatonic scale, and the third one was C minor pentatonic scale. So the basic Western scale is C, D, E, F, G, A, B. The key is identified by the first note of the particular 7-tone progression being used. On concert programs, most musical offerings are listed with the key that begins the piece. For example, Beethoven's Symphony No. 9 is in D minor. So let's take a look at that. Keys can be major. This means using whole tones, or minor, combining whole and half tones, which on the piano are the black keys. Rhythm, found in most early cultures for its vital importance in ritual dances, may well have preceded the discovery of tones. At any rate, it's hard to imagine music without any rhythm. Just as modern poets seek to free themselves from the constructions and constraints of a meter, so we have the idea of melodic minors and melodic meter. All right. All right. Working as a unit and played or sung more than once. If a work is a long sequence of tones in which a given unit is never replaced, as in a modern opera, some listeners complain that there is no melody. To the Western ear, music or non-Western cultures use unfamiliar progressions of tones, and therefore it lacks melody. So let's take a look at what would be a melody in a C major that you probably have heard before. And let's just take a look here. And let me go ahead and make sure. Okay. And then we start over. All right. Romantic composers such as Brahms, Tchaikovsky, and Rachmaninoff are said to be masters of melody. Because of their music, it offers a sequence of tones that are lushly orchestrated and repeated often. So it's that repeat where we start to become extremely attracted. When people complain that the melody is lacking in a certain piece, they are probably comparing it to romantic music. the beautiful Brahms lullaby. The simultaneous production of tones by voices or instruments is usually a key factor in melody, but not all music has harmony. During the Middle Ages, for example, plain song was a common use of melody. Prayers and chants sung in unison by monks and clerics was dominant. Harmony began to become more popular in the Renaissance. As composers experimented with varieties of musical instruments and vocal patterns, the invention of harmony made possible the explosion of musical styles and genres such as opera and symphony. So let's see. And then here's the harmony chords, right? So here's our melody and then our harmony. So let's just listen. All right. Silence, which shapes musical sound, is important to discuss. You might even want to extend the subject to include the question of who makes more of an impression in a group, the noisy extrovert who dominates the entire conversation, or the person who says little but knows everything that is going on.
When I hear what we call music, it seems to me that someone is talking, and talking about his feelings or about his ideas of relationships. But when I hear traffic, the sound of traffic here on 6th Avenue, for instance, I don't have the feeling that anyone is talking. I have the feeling that sound is acting. And I love the activity of sound. What it does is it gets louder and quieter, and it gets higher and lower, and it gets longer and shorter. It does all those things which I'm completely satisfied with that. I don't need sound to talk to me. We don't see much difference between time and space. We don't know where one begins and the other stops. So that most of the arts we think of as being in time, and most of the arts we think of as being in space. Marcel Duchamp, for instance, began thinking of thinking of music as being not a time art, but a space art. And he made it a piece called Sculpture Musicale, which means different sounds coming from different places and lasting, producing a sculpture which is sonorous and which remains. People expect listening to be more than listening. And so sometimes they speak of inner listening, or the meaning of sound. When I talk about music, it finally comes to people's minds that I'm talking about sound that doesn't mean anything, that is not inner, but is just outer. And they say, these people who understand that finally say, you mean it's just sounds? Thinking that for something to just be a sound is to be useless. Whereas I love sounds just as they are. And I have no need for them to be anything more than what they are. I don't want them to be psychological. I don't want a sound to pretend that it's a bucket, or that it's a president, or that it's in love with another sound. I just want it to be a sound. And I'm not so stupid either. There was a German philosopher who's very well known, Immanuel Kant. And he said there are two things that don't have to mean anything. One is music and the other is laughter. Don't have to mean anything, that is, in order to give us very deep pleasure. You know that, don't you? The sound experience, which I prefer to all others, is the experience of silence. And the silence almost everywhere in the world now is traffic. If you listen to Beethoven or to Mozart, you see that they're always the same. But if you listen to traffic, you see it's always different.
End of this video. I hope that that helped you a little bit with what you're reading about. I hope that you take the time to listen to some music, to listen to Brahms, to listen to Beethoven, to listen to Marcel Duchamp. Maybe look up who exactly John Cage is, and I think you will find a lot there. All right, till next time.